Listen, I have absolutely no shame, embarrassment, or regret whatsoever in my heart when I say that I was once a massive, massive Harry Potter fan. I legitimately spent the entire car ride with my parents on the way to Universal as a kid explaining all of the lore of Harry Potter so that they'd understand what everything was once we got to Universal Studios to the Harry Potter section of the park because they had to know. And that's a good, 40-minute long explanation minimum. I took a lot longer, but to be clear, I was certainly a Harry Potter fan as a kid. I think a lot of us were. It was a fantasy series, a magical fantasy series set in the modern world that was meant to appeal to young people, that aged with a lot of its demographic, and it just had a lot, and it didn't have a particularly high reading level, so the barrier of entry was pretty low, and it just had a lot going for it that made it really, really popular in its book form. Shortly after, movies started coming out, and the movies only bolstered the still coming out books' popularity, and from there, Harry Potter has been a household name, as has been its author, J.K. Rowling. Now, J.K. Rowling used to be beloved. Okay, when I was a kid, I looked up to J.K. Rowling. Her website, Pottermore, or whatever it was called. I had an account on there. I used to fucking do the little test on there to find out what house I would be in. And then there was I think one where you could brew potions and stuff, and that was really cool. I really liked that stuff. However, J.K. Rowling sadly ended up losing the favor of a large amount of Harry Potter fans when she decided to make a Twitter account and start talking about the sexualities of some of the characters. You see, J.K. Rowling wasn't exactly very brave in any of her writing, in my opinion. When you go back and you look back at Harry Potter, nothing about it is very brave. Okay, let's be real. Nothing about it is very brave. Can we be honest here? Can you guys name a single thing brave that J.K. Rowling did when writing Harry Potter? As far as storytelling goes, a bold new thing. The fat phobia was very brave. Oh, I'll be getting into that in just a moment, Trash Boy. It's literally the thesis of this entire video is the way that J.K. Rowling describes and talks about antagonistic characters in her stories. Oh, don't you worry. I'm going to get into that in just a moment. Obviously, there's nothing in Harry Potter that's extremely brave in regards to storytelling. I would say the most impressive storytelling beat that she really did is probably what stuck with the vast majority of Harry Potter fans the most, and that's Snape's storyline. Snape's storyline is probably the most mature and well-written piece of writing that you really get out of J.K. Rowling in Harry Potter. And I've taken a look at some of her other writing as well because I thought I'd like it because I liked Harry Potter, and I fucking burned through every single Harry Potter book as a kid during 1 week-long vacation. We were out of town for 1 week. I read through every single one of the Harry Potter books in that time. I stayed up all night and would stay up all day. I had nothing else to do because I was just didn't have a cell phone or anything. So I was just I'll read. So I read. And without a doubt, Snape's storyline and the way that she wrote Snape and how that ended up working out and being revealed and just the twists and turns and the is he bad, is he not bad, that ended up being very well written. But if I'm being honest, looking back at it, putting aside the insane transphobia, the her making her Twitter account to come back and cowardly comment on the sexualities of characters to canonize it after the story's been told, it really feels like J.K. Rowling was too much of a coward to make Dumbledore gay in the story, and so she decided, okay, well, I'll just announce now that gay people are more accepted and it won't be as controversial. I'll announce it now. Or, more likely, she did it for relevance and for brownie points, which seems a lot more likely. It just didn't come off well. And that was what really started to get people a little bit iffy on J.K. Rowling. But it really just came off as an out-of-touch wine mom kind of thing. Oh, she means well, though. sort of thing at first, you know? However, things did not continue that way. J.K. Rowling's discussions and conversations and tweets, most notably, about trans people and their identities gained her quite a bit of ire online. And it began with, like, the natural, like, trans people who like Harry Potter being like, whoa, well, that's what you just said. There's a little sus, Miss Rowling. I really look up to you. Could you maybe you might want to reconsider what you said there? But then she doubled down. And the problem is, when it's a matter of one person's personal opinion and another person's literal right to exist, I think I can give a little bit of sympathy to the people who the discussion is being based around their right to exist being a little bit on edge. And trans J.K. Rowling fans were a little bit on edge. And so slowly, over time, as J.K. Rowling started to kind of leak more and more transphobic, turfy opinions, the opinion around J.K. Rowling got more and more and more degraded, until eventually she put out this grand manifesto in which she denounced the trans activists and more or less announced that she was a TERF. And, a lot of the check boxes of her manifesto were that of, like, that of the opinions of a TERF. J.K. Rowling got a lot of shit for this. Her image destroyed. A whole lot of people who used to look up to her and see her as a hero no longer do. J.K. Rowling hasn't handled it so well, though. You see, J.K. Rowling has gone on numerous rants on Twitter, in books, it would seem, and so on, that clearly are her coping and venting about how mad she is about the internet and the trans community not liking her for being transphobic. And most recently, she put out a new book called Inky Black Heart, I think it's called. Correct, I may be wrong on the name. I think it's called Inky Black Heart. Anyway, she put it out under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith because J.K. Rowling is the type of TERF that, like... Now, this was true when she first started writing. She believed that, like, an author with a woman's name would be a lot harder for, like, young men to pick up a book from and start reading. And so she used the pseudonym Robert the pen name, the pen name Robert Galbraith, a male sounding name, which is also the same name as the guy who invented conversion therapy, by the way, gay conversion therapy. Keep that in mind. So that's pretty cringe. However, her justification of that name was that she suspected that boys would not want to read a book written by a woman. Back in the day, that's a little, I guess that's a little bit, I like reasonable, but nowadays it really feels like a fake feminist, like, I use a male name when writing because it's the only, to trick men into reading my books. Like, it's really weird. You're literally a famous author. There's no other reason than pretentiousness and like to get attention to make your books under a pseudonym. It's really weird. Yeah, it's like claiming future victimhood. It's being able to claim victimhood for something that's never happened yet. It's pop feminism. So, as you can see, J.K. Rowling was pissing off people on the right, even, with her weird, like, cringy pop feminism as well. Anyway, she put out her recent book, and I just want to discuss the first few paragraphs, or read the first few paragraphs of this article that discusses it, and then we can move on to the contents of the book itself. J.K. Rowling's latest installment in her Corman Strike mystery series, The Ink Black Heart, which recently published under her very public pseudonym, Robert Galbraith, coincidentally centers around a public figure who gets cancelled for being a transphobe. The poor thing even ends up getting murdered. The character, Edie Ledwell, a well-known cartoonist, gets persecuted by former fans turned evil, vicious trolls who also, coincidentally, accuse her of being racist and ableist. That's right. She wrote a book about a beloved cartoonist being accused of transphobia and getting canceled by the internet and getting murdered for it. How much of a fucking loser do you have to be? Can you imagine her fucking crying and sniveling, writing the book, her little pity party book? Oh my god. Like, I'm just thinking of it now and I'm cringing at it. I'm cringing at the fact that she could feel so entitled as to have that emotion. Ugh. If this sounds familiar, it's because it is. For anyone who has managed to miss it, Rowling has a long history of public transphobia, over which former fans have cancelled her many, many times. The Ink Black Heart, mimetic of her experience, appears to be her attempt to paint people like her as victims against a bloodthirsty mob of trans activists who threaten the morally upstanding Ledwell. One of her online harassers murders her, though readers are left wondering for most of the book what ideology drives her killer to such lengths. It is the final nail in the coffin, we hope, of Rowling's transphobic legacy. What's more, the book reveals how blithely unaware Rowling is. One of the most influential and wealthy people in the world, a cisgender white woman, sees herself as the victim of the minoritized community she has targeted, a community that doesn't have nearly the same platform or reach she has. Her sense of victimhood is the icing on the bigoted and unpalatable cake. Fans started to suspect Rowling's unsavory attitudes towards trans people in Well, okay, now we're just getting into what I already explained, so we don't need to go any further. Anyway, with that said, let's go. I realize J.K. Rowling's new novel might seem a little long at 1,200 pages, but a good portion of the space is taken up by fictitious, mean tweets. I shit you not. A large portion of this book is unironically taken up by fake tweets that are literally her writing like hate tweets to herself insert. Can you fucking imagine sitting over a fucking keyboard writing fake hate tweets to yourself insert? Let's read some of these comments. Shallow bitch. If you got raped every time you said something dumb, you'd be permanently full of cock. Spelled C-O-K. Based. If God meant us to feel sympathetic, why'd he make crying people look so fucking ugly? Can somebody tell that vile mercenary bitch to take a dirt nap? Hashtag stop feeding Fedwell. Hashtag I stand with Josh. Honestly, at this point, the bitch can choke. All that BS about doing it for love, not money. Hashtag stop feeding Fedwell. Hashtag I stand with Josh. You know what's really funny? These are literally the exact same types of like the level of hate in these tweets isn't even reflective of the average woke scold, abusive piece of shit like woke scold tweet that I see. This isn't even a good parody of like a trans abusive woke scold who's telling some like turf to kill themselves online. It's not even a good representation of that because it's not passive aggressive enough. There's too much direct threats and calls for violence in this. This is more like the types of messages you see literal turfs leave on 15-year-old trans girls' Twitter profiles. Less so than the types of comments you see 15-year-old trans girls leaving on 30-year-old TERFs profiles. I know you wrote this. Link. Nope. Heisenberg? Wait, what? Wait, this is so accurate. Oh my god. This might be the most accurate tweet I've ever seen depicted in a book. It as a tweet that simply says Heisenberg with no context. I know for a fact that's not what it's meant to be, but like, if you've been on Twitter, you know that this is something someone would tweet. Simply the word Heisenberg with no context and nothing else to it. I gotta give J.K. Rowling that. That is the most realistic tweet I've ever seen put to paper in a book, which isn't saying much. You're as wrong about me being the pen of justice as you are about uncertainty principle. Lol. Wait, what? Mayor House equals the pen of justice? Her vile cartoon promotes the idea that disabled people are other slash laughable slash strange. Hashtag spoony. Hashtag ableism. And she still hasn't sat down with any disability group to discuss fans' valid concerns. Hashtag okay, this is real. To be fair, and she hasn't sat down with it. This I've heard people say this about me, that I haven't sat down with like disability groups or whatever, like to discuss these issues, and that's why I'm ableist or whatever. I've heard that before. So this is actually a realistic tweet. I'll give her a point on this one. It's still a fake tweet she made up to like tell to herself insert in a pity party book, but I'll give her that one. That one's realistic. Yeah, imagine the next one just says kid named Finger. What's your disability? Being a land whale? What the fuck? Jesus. For those of you that are unaware, J.K. Rowling is fatphobic, and I have no doubt in my mind that her fatphobic tendencies were reared out in this tweet. Suicidal ideation, the disabled, laughing about depression isn't cool, I agree, but he's talking about suicidal past. So as you can imagine, it's just a whole bunch of random, like, delete that for fuck's sake, deleted. There are other better ways. That psycho bitch is gearing up to kill him. Like, just, you know, like, really just a whole bunch of just shit tons. We can just keep going. Just a whole lot, a good fair amount of fake tweets that she wrote to herself insert in her own book, telling herself to kill herself. Listen, as I said in my last video, the internet has made the truth more accessible than ever. Anyone could just go on Google and do their own research and come out of it with a pretty damn well-rounded understanding of most issues, as long as they're somewhat mindful in what sources they get their information from. However, with that being said, when the truth is so readily out there, for some reason it's made people more willing to accept lies. It's like the truth isn't good enough anymore. The truth isn't exciting or interesting enough anymore. Or sometimes the truth is too inconvenient, so we have to believe in a convenient lie. And so when you're somebody like J.K. Rowling, extremely wealthy, extremely privileged, and you feel like the worst thing that anybody can do to you is say mean things to you on Twitter, then yeah, you're going to throw a pity party and write a book about yourself in which you literally write a bunch of fake kill yourself tweets to yourself insert in your pity party for the whole world to see and support you with, because you just can't get over people living in a way that you don't approve of. It really is some serious loser shit. Now, that isn't even all like the thesis of this segment, if I'm being honest. Something I want to talk about is that I think J.K. Rowling lacks empathy. Fundamentally, I think she lacks empathy. Not just in her behavior, but in her writing. And I think it becomes most evident in the way that she describes characters that are antagonistic towards her protagonists. I think, you know, the way she describes Dudley, Dolores Umbridge, you know, like these characters that are described as being disgusting, pig-like, like there's never like, besides Snape, who stands out so much because he's one of the few antagonistic characters that's ever given even the smallest amount of depth. Besides that, overwhelmingly, any character, like, it almost sounds like J.K. Rowling hates some of the characters she describes. Like, the way she describes, like, Hermione the first time is, like, so mean. It's like, it's almost cruel, right? And recently, you know, obviously I've been getting into House of the Dragon, and I've been getting into the Rings of Power, and these, you know, two big shows, you know, the source material comes from Tolkien in one case, and the source material comes from George R.R. Martin in the other case. I've been doing a lot of like research and a lot of you know, watching a lot of content about their about like their entire like you know, writing style and what they do. And I've been watching a lot of interviews with George R.R. Martin. And just before stream, I saw an interview with him in which he talked about one of his biggest breakthroughs in writing, in his like writing skill. And I realized I don't think J.K. Rowling has had this breakthrough yet. George R.R. Martin writes his story, particularly the Game of Thrones, the Song of Ice and Fire, the Game of Thrones storybooks, whatever. He writes those books from the perspective of a whole bunch of different main characters. And the way that he, as the author, portrays information about the world and objective events is through the eyes of that character and how they would realistically see it. The example he gives is if a child sees something, he is going to like first or second or third person. So to be fair, J.K. Rowling wrote Harry Potter in third person, but I think there are still ways to get around this anyway. The example that George R.R. Martin used was that when Brandon Stark, when he discovers Jaime and Cersei Lannister boning in the top of the tower in like in the beginning of the story, like in the in Winterfell, from his perspective, he's like 7 years old. He doesn't know what sex is. So from his perspective, the way that he tells the story is he climbs up the tower and sees two naked people wrestling. And that's what he thinks is going on. And then all of a sudden, he gets pushed from the tower and doesn't know why or what happened. And he's confused. He talks about how the motivations of characters, the way they see the world, the way that the audience receives information about the world through those characters, and the way they would see the world is very important and is frankly demonstrative of good writing. I really honestly do think Harry Potter being written from like third person is a little bit lazy. I kind of would have liked Harry Potter more if it was written from multiple characters' perspectives. If like, all right, now we're seeing things from Harry's perspective. Oh shit, now we're with Hermione. Oh shit, oh this is a Ron chapter. Okay, all right. Oh, are we having a Snape chapter? Okay, cool. Oh, a Dumbledore chapter. This is interesting. I don't know. Listen, all I'm saying, I'm not saying J.K. Rowling's a bad writer, but compared to like other writers who have achieved similar levels of like fame as her, she's not as good as them. J.K. Rowling is not as good of a writer as George R.R. Martin. J.K. Rowling is not as good of a writer as Tolkien. And she's not even as good as of a writer as many like current day modern authors such as Stephen King. Nothing that I don't think Harry Potter could not even attempt to scratch the surface of the literary universe, the shared literary universe that Stephen King has made. It's actually fucking crazy. Anyway, with all that said, J.K. Rowling is not hot shit. Not like she thinks she is. She may think she is, but she is not. Keep yourself humble, guys. Never let your ego get too inflated. Anyway, with all that said, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this segment, please consider leaving a like. It means a lot more than you even realize. It helps the channel a lot more than you even realize, and I appreciate it more than you even realize. Simply hitting that thumbs up button really does a lot for me, and I really appreciate it. You can also see more from me here on YouTube if you hit that subscribe button and ring that bell icon to turn on all notifications so YouTube actually tells you when I go live or upload a new video. You can also go to my description and look at all of my social media and follow them, including my Twitter, my Instagram, my fan Discord. If you're like a really hardcore fan, you want to take part in some of the watch parties and some of the game nights that we do and just the general conversations I have with people in there. And of course, finally, if you want to support me financially, you can make an account on my website, xanderhall.com/live, and you can donate, subscribe, or gift a sub on my website. You can eliminate the white names, or you can give yourself a colored name and eliminate your own whiteness. There are tons of different ways that you can support me financially, both on my website, YouTube, Twitch, Streamlabs, Stream Elements, and Patreon. But with all that said, regardless of how you support me, I really appreciate it. And if you watch this all the way through, comment down below, J.K. Rowling is a muggle. Thank you.